All right, so let's dive in a little bit deeper to the on-demand report. So again, under sidebar menu, on-demand reports. And let's talk today about editing some of the templates, and I'm going to use a workgroup queue summary as my example here. So again, on the right-hand side, just some basic parameters for a workgroup report here. I can choose if I want to include all groups, all work groups in this report. Maybe I just want to choose one particular group, or select some specific multiple groups. But for right now, I'm just going to do all. And date range is fine. I'll leave that for the last 10 days. I'm going to click on the edit mode. So I actually want to get into changing some of the rows, columns, and values. So the values, I'm going to simplify this down here, and I'm actually going to take everything out except for count all calls. So if I go ahead and preview this report, it's just going to break it down. So my rows are a breakdown of each separate work group, and then obviously my values, I'm just determining that based on whatever I pull down here from my available values. That could be percentages, call counts like I'm looking at now, or time. All right, so pretty simple report, but I just kind of wanted to go through and give you a better idea of the difference between the rows, the columns, and the values based on the available dimensions and available values. So available dimensions, anything in here can be pulled down into the row or column. Just depends on how you want to view that. So I'm going to use the weekday dimension as an example. So right now I'm going to pull that down into my row. So basically this is how I'm grouping the data. I'm going to group by work group and then by weekday. So watch how my report changes here when I preview this now. Right, so here I still have rows set up for each separate work group, but I've added additional rows now as a breakdown for each group based on the day of the week. So I can kind of get an idea of what those call counts are by each day. I can view that a little bit differently. So rather than view the weekday by the row, I'll drag it down to the column view here, preview report, and now it just breaks it out across the top. So it just depends on how you want to view that report. Personally, I don't really use the columns too much. I like to break it down by rows. It's just easier for me, but totally up to you on how you want to do that. So maybe you want to add in something else as well, right? So let's look at let's just look at maybe queued calls. So I could pull that down here, break it down even further. All right, so now I'm looking at work group by day by calls that were queued. And so we can see that. And if I drag maybe the queued calls down into the column view, you can get an idea of what that looks like. So again, my rows are my work group name, my day of the week, and then the columns are, was it not queued or queued? Make sense? And then for the available values, that I can drag down to the values box here. So that's what's going to add on to my report. Let me get rid of the queue. We'll just refresh this. So okay, here we go, by group and by day again. So call count of all calls, and I also want to let's look at our number of abandoned calls as well. So I'll drag that down. Preview report. So now I've got two values added on as columns, right? So my call count of all calls and my call count of abandoned calls. All right. Maybe I want to add in a percentage. So I want to not only look at the totals of calls and total abandons, but I actually want to see the percentage of calls that were abandoned. So I'll drag that down there as well. Bam, there we go. All right. So it's really, really easy to change and manipulate the metrics within a particular report template. I recommend you can certainly over here on the left-hand side, you can create a new summary report or new detail report from scratch. It's really hard to do that, and that's for probably more of the advanced user as they've spent a lot of time in BrightMetrics. I'd recommend just going into an existing template and then kind of changing things from there. It's a lot easier, and just playing around with, okay, when I drag an available dimension down into a row or down into the column view, how does that change what that report looks like? That's probably what's most confusing to people is just understanding the rows versus the columns with the dimensions. So available values are just, what actual data you want to look at, what metrics, call counts of abandoned, all calls that were transferred, etc. And so those we're just dragging down into the values box. So if I want to add in one more here, we'll look at the percentage of calls that were transferred by an agent, right? So again, preview report, and it's just extending my report out to the right here with another column for my percentage of agents, percentage of calls transferred by an agent. So that's just a pretty quick overview of how to open an existing template and then change some of the rows, columns, and values. And again, we can email that report, and we can also save that report. So get it the way you want, and then go ahead and save that. And next time it'll show up under the Save Report section of your on-demand reports.